We asked in our free school group what you wanted the topic of this call to be today, and the majority of guys, they said that they're struggling to reach like the hook point of their conversations in daytime and in nighttime anyway. And the hook point is essentially the point where the woman is now intrigued by you and is excited to keep talking to you. Like before the hook point, you're basically fighting to keep her attention, and then once she's reached like the hook point, her attention has been hooked, and there's no fighting anymore. She wants to be there. So the number one reason I would say that beginners like fail to get to this hook point is because they don't warm up in their day game. And what I mean by that, by warm up, is that they get themselves into a social mood, a social flow, before they see that very first girl who they want to speak to. So a lot of guys, they have an ego about this. They feel like they're too good to do a warm up, or that's what they tell themselves. Maybe they're too embarrassed to do a warm up, and they say, okay, just when I see the 8 or the 9 or the 10, I'm just going to approach her, and it's going to go well. That's what they tell themselves. And yeah, some guys, they actually do have the discipline to actually approach the first hot girl that they see after 15-20 minutes of walking around looking for her. But even if they do, they're not in their full charisma, because they're not in a social mood. They haven't unlocked their full charisma, so their way of speaking is a bit like stuttery. They're not in basically a social mood yet, because they have been walking around stuck in their own head, and that's a problem. So these guys that don't do the warm up, they approach that first girl, but it's just not fully. They haven't unlocked their full charisma. They're not fully in state. They call it, in like a social flow, and that the girl can feel that awkwardness, and she's less compelled to like stay in the conversation, because she feels that weirdness and awkwardness that you still have because you haven't warmed up. By a warm up, what I recommend to do is just to find somewhere in your location where you're doing day game, and just tell yourself, whoever's there, you're going to speak to them, whether that's like an old grandma, whether it's like a group of men, or whoever it is, no matter what, you're just going to say, like, give them a compliment, ask for directions, do something. And then try to don't have more than 60 seconds to 2 minutes of not speaking to someone. Then when that beautiful woman that you actually want to speak to walks past, you're going to be in more of a social mood, and it's more likely to be smooth approach and be free flowing. You're going to be able to unlock your charisma, and it's just more likely to hook. In a similar vein, what I would say is, hi Clint, if you're just joining. We're doing the pre-prepared content at the moment, so we're going to jump into a Q&A shortly after that. So what I would say is that people who only do 2 or 3 approaches per day game session, they're less likely to get into a social hook point as well, because none of the approaches they do, they're reaching that full that flow, that full social flow. Because with a lot of guys, it takes maybe 4, 5, 6 approaches before they reach that. So I know, Ciaran, I'll be actually interested to hear your opinion on this, because I know back in the day, you kind of got some notoriety in in the game community, because you did that 100 women in 50 days challenge a long time ago now, where you approach 2 women every day. Whereas when I was coming up, I tried to approach 10 or more women per day, but I would only do it maybe 3 times a week. So what would be your opinion on those 2 strategies?
I mean, I guess technically it doesn't really matter. If I was just guessing, what I would say is I would say doing 2 a day consistently is probably better, because if you don't want to go large periods of time without actually doing it, and then you go those large periods of time without doing it, and you kind of maybe forget the lessons that you learned in the days that you actually did, and maybe you You know, you slowly kind of go back to zero, so to speak. But both are good, really. What I'll say is the issue is that with most guys, what most guys do is they will go out once a week and they'll maybe do one approach once a week or something like that. That's what actually most guys are doing. I think the difference between doing 10 3 times a week and 2 every single day isn't that big at all. I think it's more like, yeah, I mean, I do want to get good at this, but I've got the rest of my life going on as well. And yeah, I'll go out on Saturday, and I went out on Saturday, and I did like maybe one. So like one's all right, right? Like
Maybe
one's
one.
okay. I did one like once a week.
Yeah.
I say it's more that really.
So in order to not feel uncomfortable doing day game approaches, you have to build like momentum, social momentum. I've done a couple of videos on that topic on our YouTube channel. So there's micro momentum where you build momentum, what I talked about, doing it in the session, getting those first warm-ups. And then what you're talking about, which is I agree is arguably important too, is like the macro momentum of doing it several times a week at least, or ideally every day. And that's going to get rid of the awkwardness, and the girl's not going to feel the awkwardness, and you're more likely to hook the conversations for that reason.
Something I'll say quickly is that in the men I've coached, something I see a lot is that guys really want to underestimate how much they will need to do or how much they should do. You know, they want to think that again they could go out once a week and they can approach one woman once a week and have that make any kind of real, possible, tangible difference, and that they're going to make rapid changes. They'll want to think that, but on the flip side, they'll be aware of the fact that, like, let's say if they wanted to get big muscles or whatever, they need to work out every day. Like, they'll know that. And they'll know that if they want to get a promotion at their job, they'll need to study and work hard every day at their job and blah, blah, blah. But where this is concerned, they really want to think that they can just do it very easily and with minimal effort.
Or watch other people do it, or just watch the YouTube videos as well, as if that's going to help without any taking action. A beginner mistake which I really want to mention quickly, because there doesn't really too much talking about, it's the approaches where the guys try to walk with the girl as opposed to stopping her. So these are the two ways you can either like try and get a girl to stop and then do your approach, or you can like try and walk with her. And what I would say is that stopping her is always the optimum one that you want to go for. And the reason why is because now you have her full attention, right? You have the eye contact, so you've got more of a vibe together. She's not thinking anymore about going where she needs to go. She's fully focused on you instead of going where she needs to go. And you just can't have like build a personal connection where when you're a stranger, you're trying to stop her, you're walking next to her, she might be even worried about like how long you're going to follow her for. So that's just something which I thought was really obvious, but whenever I go out with beginners, I see a lot of them still trying to do that. And it's just, you're never going to get like that hook point, because it's just so much more difficult to even have a woman's full attention. So basically the final thing I wanted to mention is just guys who are doing day game, but they don't have the proper structure, right? So in our school VIP group, we've got over 6 hours of footage of the Game Global coaches doing successful day game approaches. And what you'll notice in those videos, like the actual structure of what we're doing is very similar in all of the videos, and the reason for that is because it works. But what we've noticed is, like with other guys, they want to try and do it differently, right? So like some guys, for example, they're trying to do like an indirect approach, and they're trying to talk about like things going on in their city and the weather or anything other than what it is they actually want, which is taking her out on a date. And a lot of guys might reach like a social like friend zone hook point by getting into conversations like that. But as far as like a romantic hook point where she's like interested in flirting with you and swapping contact details and going on a date, it doesn't really happen. So if you are someone who struggles with like reaching like the hook point in your conversations, and women aren't ever really interested in stopping and listening to you and having a little flirt or whatever, we would recommend checking out our paid school group, our VIP school group. In that, like I said, you're going to get over 6 hours worth of like audio and video footage of the day game approaches from the game global coaches, as well as other premium footage. You're going to get our night game and dates field reports, so you're going to see examples of how we pull home from those scenarios. And also you're going to be able to access these Zoom calls 4 times per week on 4 different topics every single week. So you've got message game, you got day game, you got night game, and you've got social circle game. 4 calls per week. Hi Sid, we're just finishing like the prepared content. And yes, also the masterclass course where you get 2 coaches on 1 call at the start of every month. That's all in there, all for $100 per month. I've never seen any value like that. And also just actually seeing like the professionals and you know, successful people and successful day game, and seeing a structure that works, that can fulfill you with like the confidence that like, oh, if this guy can do it, then I can do it too. So if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll include like a link in the description for our school group and for our master, so you can get involved in these masterclass calls as well. So that's the prepared content. We'll stick that on YouTube. You can jump into like a Q&A now.